Welcome to Dalma Makes. In this video, I'll share this art journal page made with mixed media. I started out with a light pencil sketch. First, I'm drawing a little shape that's going to be my potato, and I'm deciding on what kind of eyes I should give it. I wanted it to be cute and smiling, but I also wanted it to convey the expression of daydreaming. I quickly gave the potato some little arms and little feet, and then tried to wrap it up really cozily into a warm blanket. To amplify the coziness and fill in the space a little bit, I added some cushions on both sides and a small teddy bear to keep the potato some company. In the upper portion of the page, I'm going to do something completely different. So I gave this dream bubble to the potato to illustrate what it's thinking about. Happy with my sketch, I went in with a black fineliner pen and I inked everything. Also refining a little bit those folds in the blanket and the cushions. I don't draw very often and I'm by no means any expert, I just try to use some logic. And I also looked at some references for what cushions looked like, because that thing happens when you really want to see something in front of you. Sometimes you can't reach it, like a word that you can't think about. And all of a sudden I just forgot what cushions look like. To ink the dream bubble, I used a black alcohol marker instead to have much bolder lines. Done with the inking, I took an eraser to the page and got rid of all my messy, sketchy pencil lines. I'm going to color the potato and her environment with alcohol markers. This is also a relatively new medium for me. I am not an expert by any means. I'm just trying to get it to look as nice as I can. I wanted the potato to be very clearly a potato, so I chose 2 shades of brown and I used the darker one for the shadows and used the lighter one for most of it and blending. I didn't like how flat it looked, so I decided to add texture by placing lots and lots and lots of dots with both of the colors and a colorless blender as well. I also gave my potatoes some rosy cheeks, just because I find it cute. I colored the teddy bear with lighter browns, only gently shading to give it a little bit of dimension. I did want it to look like a toy. For the blanket, I thought I would use 2 different blues, but as I was coloring I realized I could very simply just shade with the same color by going over the same area multiple times, and that worked out really well, and I didn't need to use that second color. And I used the colorless blender to highlight some of the areas. The cushions got colored in the same way. I chose a selection of greens for them. I wanted my potato to be sitting on a nice warm fluffy rug. So I just used one color and my colorless blender to give it a lot of texture to allude to that fluffiness. With that, my potato is done, but I also wanted to color in the background, and instead of a flat color, I decided to add a sort of wood paneling effect to the background. I just gave myself a guide with a ruler and a pencil, and I used two colors to sort of make the effect of wood paneling. I made sure I only used my markers horizontally, like the way the wood grain would go, and I added a shadow area under every single one of those wood panels with a darker color. And I also used my colorless blender for a bit more detail on those panels. So while my potato is cozy, she's still dreaming of beautiful summer flowers. And I just so happen to have a lot of these flower cutouts. These are from magazines, seed packets, or those random gardening catalogs and flyers they just put in your mailbox. Sometimes, just to keep my hands busy, I leaf through them and I cut out anything that I like, and I use them for different projects. I intend to create an absolute chaotic jumble of just flowers. I want it to be full and crowded and overlapping, and I want it to be loud and colorful. I figured in the end the easiest way to fill in the daydream bubble was to just cut out the blank space. This way, instead of fighting to fit the colors to the contour, I can just glue them to the following page and make my life so much easier. I'm just sort of trying to fill in the entire space by overlapping them, sort of like a puzzle. I don't want to have any white space visible. I'm just using a glue stick. It works quite well to stick paper to paper. All of the flowers I have chosen are actually photos of flowers. None of them are drawn or painted, so they kind of go together. I also like the idea that the potato is daydreaming in realistic Technicolor while she is just a little cartoon. Once done with my collage, I just cut off the excess that was going over the edges of the page, and I glued down the first page like a flap. This way, this area is perfectly framed. On the other side of the double page, I decided to go simple and just add this beautiful, subtle, flowery pattern paper. I cut out an appropriately sized piece to cover my page, but I had a little bit of unsightliness from using the alcohol markers a little bit imprecisely. So instead of fighting it, I just doubled down and went in with a brown marker to add a brown margin. I also inked the pattern paper on the edges a little bit to bring in a little bit of a warm tone, and I just glued it down to my page with a glue stick. I also used the chisel tip of my brown marker to run it along the edges of both pages to have a beautiful finished detail. The last element I'm going to add is a little text box. Then I'm going to use these 2 scraps of pattern papers to sort of make a framed text box. I inked and glued these 2 together, and once again I marked with my ruler some horizontal lines because I do have trouble sometimes staying in line with my handwriting. And I just wrote out, in the bitter cold of winter, cozy potato, dreams of summer flowers. And then I went over it one more time to sort of thicken the lines and make the writing bold. To attach it, I used a sparing amount of PVA glue, just because this was stacked a little thicker and I wanted to avoid curling. And that's it. My art journal page is done. I incorporated an element of upcycling, a little bit of drawing and coloring, and a little bit of collage. I think it counts as mixed media. Please do let me know what you think about this art journal page in the comments. I would love to hear some feedback from you. If you enjoy this, please consider subscribing to my channel. I upload a new crafty video every week. Thank you for watching. I hope you're having a nice day. Bye.